I didn't even know. I'm
Down there has the date, and Brian says the date got bigger. They want to remind you it's Monday.
Yeah, we're making adjustments with the brand new studio. So, but I do love the zipper, our own in-house zipper that tells us what's happening in the world and what guests are coming up, and most importantly, what day it is and what planet.
Let's just watch.
Yeah.
Coming up, let's just watch. Yeah, Pete Hegseth is coming up today on Fox and Friends.
Look at that.
We see Conway. That was Kellyanne Conway.
Right.
Look at that. We see Ivanka's name.
Right.
She'll be with us 1 hour from right now, and of course, down in Washington, D.C., everybody's talking about what the big Comey hearing last week. And in fact, the big story out of Washington is James Comey is probably going to write a book. And everybody wants to publish the book because they think that he's got more beans to spill, although he seemed to spill a lot of beans from his point of view last week.
I wonder in the book will we see the memos?
Right.
The House Intelligence Committee is asking for those memos. They have reached out to the White House counsel, Don McGahn, asking them for James Comey's memos, and also sent a letter to Comey asking for the memos. Deadline is June 23rd. So we'll see.
Why do I have a hunch that he only took notes with President Trump and not with President Obama? Because they only met together twice and nothing significant happened. He already indicated that unless things happen, I don't really jot things down. That's one thing I'm curious about.
It all depends on what you define notes as. Something could be notes, something could be from a diary, and then it's like, well, these are the only notes I've got. But I've got the stuff from the diary regarding Loretta Lynch, but that's a different thing.
We were at Yankee Stadium yesterday for Fox Fan Day. We'll talk about that coming up. But I talked to some of the folks that watch our show, and they were like, do you remember when Paul Ryan last week said, you got to give this president a break. He's a business guy. You know, he went in there and he said as a friend, you know, can you just cut this guy some slack? He was a general. I really like him. Comey agreed. I really like him. He said that was his message. That's what they thought the message was.
Sure.
And they're saying, the president, come on. He's a businessman. Let him, you know, he's only been in for a few months.
And we're going to get to that. It's not going to be what they think. It's not going to be what we think. It's going to be what Robert Mueller ultimately thinks. Was it a obstruction of justice? Meanwhile, let's talk about what's going to be happening this week. At some point, Attorney General Sessions is expected to go to Capitol Hill Tuesday. And at some point, we don't know if it's behind closed doors. We don't know if it's going to be an open-air setting.
I think open.
Right?
Initially.
Yeah, we'll see. Because I'm not sure if he's committed to doing that, at which time he's going to be asked to explain why he met, if indeed he did, with Ambassador Kislyak of Russia 3 times. What you discussed. If I'm Sessions, I would say, oh, by the way, if that is indeed true, I got to go to the other ambassadors I saw from other countries because I'm this thing called a U.S. Senator.
Sure. Keep in mind, a lot of these things where they said he met with them, it was simply there was an event. They shook hands.
Right.
That counts as a meeting in Washington, D.C. So anyway, because there is such a swirl surrounding the President of the United States and Jeff Sessions to testify tomorrow, the President, over the weekend, hired a brand new attorney. His name is Jay Sekulow. You know him. You've seen him on TV a million times here on the channel. He will essentially be the TV face of the legal Trump team.
By the way, can I just say this? Good choice. Oh, my goodness,
absolutely. Well, not only you, Brian, but the president himself thinks Sekulow does a good job defending the president on TV. He has argued over a dozen cases before the Supreme Court. He was on the ABC Weekend Roundup show yesterday, and he had this to say about could the president possibly fire the special counsel. Watch.
You look at the issue and say, then what is the role of the special counsel here? And the special counsel allowed James Comey to testify. James Comey said he reviewed his testimony with the special counsel. I think this is unprecedented, where the testimony was reviewed, it was then discussed, and then it was part of that testimony, a large part.
So are you suggesting there, will the president promise not to interfere, not attempt at any time to order the Deputy Attorney General to fire Robert Mueller?
I mean, George, if there was a basis upon which there was a question raised that raised the kind of issues that are serious, as in the situation with James Comey, the president has authority to take action.
The president, thank goodness he has the money to hire attorneys, because you got to fight back in these situations. If Mueller's going after him and his character, he's saying, I'm going to fight back, because he says there is no investigation here. The FBI, James Comey, former FBI director, said 3 times in his meetings with him.
Yes,
we're
Mr.
not
President,
investigating
you're
you.
not under investigation. And so far, and they've been investigating for over a year, there has been no evidence of collusion. But we know, and we were talking to the author of the book that came out a couple months ago called Shattered. On the night Hillary Clinton lost the presidency, it was devised by Robbie Mook and John Podesta that they would say that essentially Russia hacked the election and blame the Russians. and they continue that narrative to today. And look how it's manifested itself. It's extraordinary.
One of the most extraordinary underreported things, not unreported, but underreported things that came out of James Comey's testimony was I knew, after I found out what the president thought, what he tweeted out, I woke up in the middle of the night and I said to myself, I got to go get my side of the story out. I'm going to call my professor at Columbia who called the New York Times, and this anonymous source close to James Comey was James Comey, and they put together, he gave up his diary notes, and they put together what he said happened between him and him and the president. And then at the end of it, he said, and I knew if I released this, it will result in a special counsel. Oh, really? Guess who's running the special counsel? Your buddy Robert Mueller. I know he's got this great reputation, but they've worked together for 30 years, and hand in hand. So he says, wait a second, you put this out there to get a special counsel, and now the president's got to feel as though he's going to get a fair shake at this? Well, this is dangerous, especially if you look at the quality of criminal attorneys. This guy's putting together a murderer's row of criminal attorneys that is going to examine the Trump administration.
He hired Michael Dreeben. He, on a part-time basis, his specialty is criminal matters. He has argued 100 cases plus before the Supreme Court, so he's extremely prepared. Then Andrew Wiseman, also, he was the chief of the fraud section of DOJ's criminal division. He was also hired by Mueller. So the president is saying,
legal studs.
Exactly. So the president is saying, I'm going to fight back. And he thinks he's innocent, so he says, I'm fighting.
As well he should. And clearly Mr. Comey was trying to work the refs in the form of Robert Mueller. He was trying to say, look at all this stuff I'm going to show you on TV. It was obstruction of justice. And essentially that's what he's trying to push, is that particular case. Newt Gingrich was on yesterday on Fox News Sunday and said, look, ultimately at the end of the day, as you look at the back of our heads, the investigators in this thing, you can't trust them.
First of all, look at what Comey said. Comey said, I deliberately leaked through an intermediary to create this counsel, who happens to be one of his closest friends. Then look at who Mueller's starting to hire. I mean, these are people that, frankly, look to me like they're setting up to go after Trump, including people, by the way, who have been reprimanded for hiding from the defense information in 2 major cases. I think this is going to be a witch hunt. I distrust independent counsels. I think that the people Mueller's bringing in are dangerous people, and any Republican who thinks this counsel is going to be neutral is crazy. It'll be like expecting the Post or the New York Times to be accurate.
That is as focused and as intense as I've seen Newt Gingrich in a long time. He is absolutely convinced it could go awry. Meanwhile, let's talk about Loretta Lynch and what came out under the Comey testimony. He says, yeah, I was concerned back in July when Loretta Lynch said to me, he said, James Comey, just to review, hey, I got to go in front of Congress, Senate subcommittee, and I was wondering, you don't mind, I'm going to call this investigation and update everybody on what I'm doing with Hillary Clinton. And Loretta Lynch says, hey, wait a second. Don't use the term investigation. Use the term matter. And everybody's fireworks went off and said, wait a second. You said that behind closed doors. Now you're saying in front of everyone. Why aren't we looking into that?
Even Democrats, Dianne Feinstein, top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, she has called yesterday for an investigation into former Attorney General Loretta Lynch. Listen to this.
I would have a queasy feeling too, though, to be candid with you. I think we need to know more about that. And there's only one way to know about it, and that's to have the Judiciary Committee take a look at that.
Were you all surprised by that?
And believe me, look for the Republicans, and look the Democratic support, it seems, to go heavily, the Judiciary Committee especially, to go heavily after this Lynch connection, because there's a memo out there, evidently from the DNC to the Attorney General, that says, whatever you do, don't go ahead and go after Hillary Clinton. They're going to ask to see that memo. If it doesn't exist, they want to know why. Perhaps it was brought up behind closed doors.
There is talk that it might be fake, so we'll have to see what this investigation brings forth. But James Comey last week did say that Lynch had asked him to downplay the investigation as merely a matter. This is not an investigation to Hillary Clinton. Please call it a matter.
Because that's politics.
And when James Comey tried to convince Congress, the reason I'm reopening this email thing is because of this memo that shows a collusion between the Department of Justice and the DNC. He never specified, Lindsey Graham said yesterday, that it might be fake. And so that's the thing. So is it a fake memo? Is it fake news? What is it? Maybe we'll find out if they get to the bottom of Loretta Lynch.
Yeah, let's see Comey's notes on that. Meanwhile, let's see what Jillian's been taking notes on.
Hey, how was
Good morning.
the weekend was good. How about you guys?
Great.
Good weekend? Yeah. Excellent. Well, we do have a Fox News alert to get to right now. Another frightening scene on a plane. Terrifying moments as thousands of feet in the air this happened. A plane packed with people forced to make an emergency landing overnight after a massive hole rips open in the engine during takeoff.
Left engine made a funny sound like a dropped a piston or something.
Some of our friends that were with us smelled burning. It got really loud and it was like then they started moving everyone from the left side of the plane over and shutting the windows.
So blessed that it wasn't much worse than it looked.
We really had no idea.
The China Eastern flight headed to Shanghai forced to circle for an hour before landing safely back in Sydney. The cause of the damage is under investigation. In just hours, the Supreme Court could rule on whether to enforce President Trump's border order. The issue is the pause on citizens from Muslim-majority nations about religion or national security. The Trump administration says the executive order puts America first and will allow time to come up with a tougher vetting process. Now, those against it have until 3 this afternoon to file a response. The White House set to unveil a major program to revamp your workplace, and Ivanka Trump is leading the way. It's Workforce Development Week. The new actions will streamline current federal training programs and expand apprenticeships. The administration will also take steps to make those programs more cost efficient. Ivanka Trump will be joining us in the next hour right here on Fox and Friends to discuss it. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And the First family reunited. First Lady Melania Trump and son Barron have officially moved into the White House. They were waiting for the 11-year-old to finish the school year in New York City. Melania tweeting this photo from inside the White House with the caption, "Looking forward to the memories we'll make in our new home." That's a look there at your headlines this morning, guys. So that's the moment that we've been talking about for a while, and it has officially happened.
Because he's out of school, and now they can move on down south.
And they're in D.C.
All right. Thanks, Jillian. You know, 13 minutes after the hour. Today marks the one-year anniversary since the deadliest terrorist attack on U.S. soil since 9/11. Now a new documentary out tells the harrowing story of what happened that night in Orlando.
He called the news media and trying to let them know that, to get his message across that America needs to stop bombing ISIS in Syria.
The filmmaker behind the documentary here live with the stories we have not heard.
And this high school student wanted to make his yearbook great again. If we drop the banner, you could see that he's wearing a Trump vest. Well, the school photo. He wants to know why, and so do we. He's coming up.
Just remember being in the very far corner and seeing everybody in front of me just drop one by one, like flies, like just everybody dropping to the floor.
Wow, today marks a year, believe it or not, since the deadliest terror attack on American soil since 9/11, when a man pledging allegiance to ISIS walked into an Orlando nightclub and killed 49 people and injured dozens more. Now a new documentary tells the story from the victims themselves. Charlie Min is that filmmaker behind 49 Pulses, and you can find out more about that on 49pulses.com. Charlie joins us right now. Charlie, what prompted you to go down there and recreate this moment and really examine what happened?
Well, Brian, I've made 23 documentaries since 2010, and most of them represent innocent people who have been murdered. I'm here to give them a voice.
Right, and what did you discover when you went down there?
Well, a lot of the victims are upset at the length of time. It took 3 hours and 12 minutes for the shooter to be taken down. In 1999, because of Columbine, the SWAT policy changed where you're supposed to go in and get the active shooter rather than surround and contain. So there's no excuse for this to happen in 2016.
Well, you have different things. For law enforcement, leave it to the law enforcement experts. But in terms of the terrorist, who really is the guy that we should focus on, this guy swore allegiance to ISIS. He killed in the name of Allah. Why?
Well, we've been seeing this disturbing pattern, Brian. Look at all the incidents in the last few years, whether it's Paris, Brussels, Ariana Grande concert. Closer to home, we have Orlando, the Boston Marathon, San Bernardino. One way I think that we could beat ISIS is to not talk about them. I think it creates copycats. So every time ISIS is mentioned, we're feeding their ego. And again, it creates copycats. We have to stop talking about them and discrediting them.
That's very interesting because you do not mention the killer's name, the terrorist's name.
I don't mention it in the movie, yes.
But we do know that Ramadan started, and guess what happened? We had 2 London attacks, attack in Paris. We might have had one in the Netherlands over the weekend. Here's some eyewitnesses talking about what it was like to go from a night of partying to a night of terror.
I found out later on, I think he had called the news media and trying to let them know that, to get his message across that America needs to stop bombing ISIS in Syria. When we heard that, we're like, oh my God, is this really what we're hearing?
When he said he had bombs to light up a city block, at that point, I started making peace with God and peace with myself.
When you went down there, obviously these people and others in the area, they're still traumatized by it, right?
Absolutely. Today being the one-year remembrance, that's what the victims want to call it. Just a few hours ago, 2 a.m. Eastern Time, about 200 mourners were out at the Pulse. My cameraman was there getting some shots. So we're going to have a full day of remembrance to honor the victims today.
So awesome.
So clothing odors don't do the talking for you. Block out odors with new Downy Protect and Refresh.
When I first started working with Capital One, my dad called them up and asked for the Jennifer Garner card, which is such a dad thing to do. After he gave his name, the woman from Capital One said, "Mr. Garner, are you related to Jennifer?" kind of joking with him. And my dad was so proud to tell her, "As a matter of fact, she is my middle daughter." So now Dad has the Venture card, he's earning his double miles, and he made a friend of the company.
Can I say it?
Go ahead.
What's in your wallet?
Nice job, Dad. Another Democrat using the stage to cuss up a storm and blast President Trump. Listen to this.
Has he kept any of these promises? No. No. Instead, sorry. I understand this is a younger audience. It's okay. Fundamentally, if we are not helping people, we should go home.
New York Senator Kristen Gillibrand keeping with the Democrats' recent trend, publicly cussing the president. But does it go too far? The Woodhouse brothers are here to debate this. Brad Woodhouse is a former DNC communications strategist, and his brother Dallas Woodhouse is the executive director of the North Carolina GOP. Thank you, brothers, for being with us.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right, Brad, because you're a Democrat, she's a Democrat. Do you defend her on this?
Absolutely. I don't have a problem with it. First of all, if you're going to sit here and criticize Democrats for using this language, and you didn't criticize Donald Trump for using the same language on the campaign trail, for using the same language in his public discourse, then you're a partisan hypocrite. Look, we're in the Trump era of discourse, of political discourse in this country. This is a man who cursed his way to the nomination, cursed his way to the White House, who incited violence against against protesters at his rallies. I hardly think Democrats should apologize for reflecting the frustrations of the American people at his failed presidency.
Dallas, what was your reaction to this?
You know, granted, if I was the Democrats and I'd put all my eggs in the basket over former FBI Director Comey, and I was embarrassed the way they were this week with, you know, basically Trump being vindicated, I'd probably
You have got to be kidding.
But I
you
want to
make this?
I tell you, this is
you
amazing.
want to make this a discussion
we
of
just
Comey?
had, Brad, I know that you guys are classless, but please let me finish. You know, we just had our North Carolina Republican State Convention, and our speakers would be shouted off the stage, they would be pulled off the stage, our crowds would go crazy if people used that kind of language talking about any president, Democrat or Republican. I think it is vile. I think it is embarrassing to their party. And I think there's no excuse for it. And,
let me say
I
something,
know
Dallas.
they are frustrated, but here's the thing. There's a lot to be happy about in this country. Consumer confidence is up. The economy is going. Unemployment is going down. And I just don't understand this vile anger that they have just because of the political position that they are in due to their own cause.
Brad, I want to get your reaction after I read this. You know, several things I want to mention here. Jerry, let me read this first. This is from the Washington Post. She talked about having anxiety dreams shortly after the inauguration and stressing over not responding to a friend's daughter who tried to sell her Girl Scout cookies. Oh my, I don't like that to use the Lord's name in vain, but it says, oh my God, I've got to blanking order those cookies. Talking about Girl Scout cookies, Jerry Seinfeld always has said, in comedy, if you cuss and you talk about sexual stuff, then it's a crutch. I've also heard that if you use bad language like this, it's a sign that you're not so smart because there are so many other words that you could replace it with. Brad, how did we get to this point where our politicians are using the F word several times on a stage and making the excuse that, hey, you're all young, so you talk like this anyway, I'm gonna try to relate to you?
Well, look, I think, first of all, I think people are, many politicians are reflecting the anxiety and the anger that the American people have at this president. This president is a failure. There's not one thing that you mentioned, Dallas, unemployment rate, consumer confidence, anything else, that's attributable to him. He hasn't passed one piece of significant legislation. He has not accomplished anything in his
pulled
presidency.
out of all these climate
he has not accomplished anything.
And kill jobs.
He hasn't accomplished anything in his presidency. And you are a bald-faced liar when you say that people would walk out. People did not walk out on Donald Trump when he told people in New Hampshire to go F themselves.
Give you the last word quickly.
I would just say that she excuses the fact there are young people at Republican events. We have a lot of children, and we just wouldn't put up with it.
How do you wouldn't put up with it if Trump did it?
All right, Brad, Dallas, I don't think we can, I mean, I can't believe this is a discussion. Politicians shouldn't be using the F word, and I hope that y'all would agree with me on that. We have kids to raise. You know, I don't want my daughter saying that word. All right, thanks so much, guys, for being with us.
Thank you.
A Florida sheriff not menacing words when it comes to terrorism.
In my book, what's next is to fully understand that this is war, and you better be prepared to wage war to protect you, your family, and those around you if attacked.
That sheriff is here live coming up next. And what does Ivanka Trump think about fired FBI Director James Comey's testimony? She's going to tell us when she joins us live at the top of the hour. Here she is with Steve in our green room, our new green room.
One blockbuster hearing is in the books, and now another is on the way.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions will now testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee on Tuesday.
He's going to be asked to explain why he met, if indeed he did, with Ambassador Kislyak of Russia.
Senator Dianne Feinstein, she said after Comey's testimony, she has questions for former Attorney General Loretta Lynch, who allegedly told the FBI director to call the Clinton email investigation a matter.
I think we need to know more about that.
Just a matter of hours, the Supreme Court could rule on whether to enforce President Trump's travel orders.
The White House set to unveil a major program to revamp your workplace, and Ivanka Trump is leading the way. It's Workforce Development Week.
New Jersey high school under fire after President Trump's name is removed from 2 students' yearbook photos.
The people or person who did this should be held responsible because it was a deliberate attempt to censor and to silence someone's freedom of speech.
Big weekend for Janice.
We got married at City Hall 10 years ago. My husband is like, we got a big anniversary coming up. Maybe we should get married at church. It just feels so special to be in, you know, the house of God.
Studio F, it's Fox and Friends for a Monday. A very special guest right over here on the new curvy couch. Hey, look, it's Ivanka Trump, special advisor to President Donald J. Trump.
It's so nice to be here.
Welcome. We're
Great
so
to
glad
have
to have you.
I join you almost every morning, just not on the couch.
What do you think of our new
extra
studio?
special to actually be here. It's amazing.
Right.
It's amazing. So the people, the location, the studio, it's great. So it's a pleasure to be here.
And of course, how often you live in New York these days? How often are you here?
I don't get here nearly as often as I would like. So
Main
we've been a
difference?
little bit busy down in Washington.
You've been spending a lot of time down in the swamp.
Very, very busy, but I actually came up for an amazing occasion. My sister-in-law Laura had a baby shower, which was very,
I saw the
very sweet.
pictures.
So it was great. We had an amazing time, all family, and just everyone came in for it, and it was really sweet.
Yeah.
I brought my daughter Arabella, who asked me if we were bringing Theodore to have him showered. And then I realized baby shower is not a self-explanatory term. If you've never heard it before, so it's very
There's
sweet.
certain things you can't Google.
Yeah. So where's Theodore? Why isn't he coming?
So last week, everybody was focused. I think 9 million people were watching in the middle of the day. They lost 33%. We lost 33% of our productivity because everyone was watching James Comey speak. What did you think? What do you think came out of that? Where did you watch it? What do you think emerged?
Well, my father felt very vindicated in all the statements that he's been making and feels incredibly optimistic. But, you know, at the White House and throughout the administration, we were incredibly focused on the reason we all went to Washington and what we're fighting for. So last week, while it didn't get the level of headlines, it will ultimately have a much more important impact, was Infrastructure Week, focusing on the commitment to rebuild this country, rebuild rural locations which have fallen into great disrepair, repair our waterways, air traffic control. So there were a series of very important and big and far-reaching initiatives on infrastructure. This coming week is about workforce development. So with all the noise, with all the intensity that of the media coverage and obviously what makes headlines, ultimately we're really focused on why the American people elected Donald Trump as their president
People say
and
jobs,
implementing
jobs,
that plan.
jobs. And that's why you, your dad, Secretary of Labor, you're going to Wisconsin tomorrow to meet with kids that are taking classes at the technical schools?
We're visiting one of the great examples of skill-based learning and skills-based education, a technical school in Wisconsin, which we're very excited about, to talk about the skills gap and to really highlight the fact that there is a viable path other than a 4-year college experience. So really investing in vocational education, skill-based training. There are 6 million available American jobs. So we're constantly hearing from CEOs that they have job openings, but they don't have workers with the skill set they need to fill those jobs.
Right.
So really bridging that gap and bringing experience-based education to the forefront. So apprenticeship. Actually, that's the model. He knows it very well, and it's worked throughout the world, and it's something we've de-emphasized here in favor of 4-year traditional college, but they don't have to be mutually exclusive.
And as somebody who's run her own business, this is something personal to you because I'm sure there have been situations where we love to hire people, but we can't find the people who have the right skill sets.
It's true, and while it's not a woman's issue, it disproportionately affects women and minorities, especially when you think out into the future, where the available jobs today and the future jobs are coming from. A lot of them are in STEM-related fields, so science, engineering,
So
computer science.
Train them today for the jobs of tomorrow.
Well, women are, for example, while we represent 47% of the overall workforce, we only make up 23% of STEM-related occupations. So we're moving in the wrong direction in terms of our participation, and that's something ultimately we need to change. Right. We'll encourage at K through 12, but also retraining for workers whose jobs have been displaced. Right. So we have a huge emphasis on it this week, and it's critically important, and I think we can make a very big impact.
But you know, not only that this week for the administration, but in your book, you put your money where your mouth is. You have women who work out there, breaks down this whole issue, especially from the female perspective, because you've gotten a real handle on it. In the big picture, the 62% of the workforce that's working is more important than the unemployment number, perhaps, because a lot of people can work. They can't find a job that matches up with their skills. In some cases, they choose not to work.
Yeah, and we need the full participation. So many people are also working jobs that are part-time. And it's an enormous problem in this country, the number of part-time workers who are working 2 and 3 jobs that collectively
they're making less than when they worked one job that's been replaced, and they don't have access to leave, to vacation, to holidays, to traditional benefits. So that's another problem that we're very much looking to address.
So this week the White House is going to be talking about these things. Next week Congress takes over, and there's a bipartisan bill that could inject $1 billion into this kind of stuff.
The Perkins Act, and it's been it's a very good piece of legislation. So they're refining and extending it, but it's all about skills-based education and really making sure people have the technical skills to succeed in this modern economy. So we're very excited, and this is honestly what it's all about. I mean, we moved down to Washington. We want to be helpful. We want to do big things, important things, and there's nothing more important than enabling people.
Is it harder than you thought, though? Is it harder than you thought to stick to the things you want to do because of what keeps coming up, whether it's the Russia investigation or something else?
It is hard, and there's a level of viciousness that I was not expecting. I was not expecting the intensity of this experience, but this isn't supposed to be easy. My father and this administration intends to be transformative, and we want to do big, bold things, and we're looking to change the status quo. So I didn't expect it to be easy. I think some of the distractions and some of the ferocity was I was a little blindsided by on a personal level. But for me, I'm trying to keep my head down, not listen to the noise, and just work really hard to take a positive impact in the lives of many people. I mean, if you want to, at the end of the day, if you want to think about difficult, it's the factory worker who's been laid off. Difficult is, the mother who's lost a child to opioid abuse. So these are the real challenges, and I think that does put it in perspective for me. Every time we get out into the country and meet with American people who are very optimistic about what's happening, and they see the economy and it's just booming. Small businesses have this sense of just vigor, and I was talking with somebody the other day who was referring to it as the animal spirits of small business owners have been released. So there is a tremendous energy, but there's also real challenges, and that's what we're looking to address. Your father had his first foreign trip. What was your reaction? What are some of the highlights from that trip?
It's a family trip.
That was an incredible trip, and
Jared was there.
Yes, Jared was instrumental in organizing and planning it, and it was wildly successful. So Saudi Arabia alone, if you think about the historic nature of gathering 54 Muslim and Arab leaders to talk about the goal of eradicating terrorism.
It was America
and to have
that we
a collective effort. It was amazing, the leadership that my father showed, the way he was able to foster real dialogue, substantive dialogue, that not only concluded in billions of dollars, almost $400 billion of business for American businesses, which was an amazing thing in and of itself. But the fact that there was able to be the substantive dialogue with these 54 leaders about how they'll collectively join to stop funding terrorism. There were commitments signed where there would be coordination to ensure that nobody was funding.
And then from Saudi Arabia, the direct flight into Israel made history that had never happened before.
And it was the first time a sitting president was at the Western Wall and had visited the hotel.
What was that like for you? Because you converted to Judaism. I know you and Jared are, your religion, your faith is extremely important to you. What was that like as a convert to be there in Israel and to meet with President Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister?
Every day in this experience has been surreal, but that was truly an unbelievable moment. So I feel blessed and privileged to have been there. It was deeply personal for me, as you note, so standing at the Western Wall in a moment of privacy, because it was really just us. It was our family that was there. It was beyond special. So really it's hard to, for each of these moments, it's hard to find the words to adequately describe them. And then to move on to Rome and to meet with the Pope. So to have covered the three largest world religions over the course of 4 days
It was deeply meaningful.
Well, the reviews came in, and you know, everybody said he did such a good job, very presidential. I want to ask you, though, personally, you know, you've lived most of your life here in New York City. Now you've relocated to a nice neighborhood in Washington, D.C. It seems like every time you go outside to get a cup of coffee or take the kids out to the park or something like that, people are taking pictures of you.
That is a weird experience.
Right?
Every day there are photographers.
Look what she's wearing.
Yeah, no, so I'm looking for alternative routes out of my home, but it's you know, there's a scrutiny and there's an interest that exceeds anything I had ever experienced before. But DC has been an amazing place. The kids are thriving, and ultimately for me, that's the number one most important thing. If the kids weren't happy, it would be very hard for me.
Yeah, no kidding.
And they really love it down there. So
does your husband like his job?
He loves it. I mean, talk about impact. You saw the results of so much of his hard work on display in Saudi Arabia and in Israel and subsequently in Rome. But, you know, aside from what he's doing on the foreign policy front, also the various initiatives he's focused on at home, really thinking about modernizing and innovating within government. We saw just this week an incredible announcement with Secretary Shulkins from the VA about how they're going to integrate their systems for the first time with the Department of Defense, which is something that they've been trying to do for 20 years, so that there could be continuous care for our soldiers as they leave service. So this is arguably the most important thing that's happened administratively within the VA in decades, and it just shows, you know, there's a real focus on getting things done and getting big things done. And obviously my father has made taking care of our veterans his highest priority and is just laser beam focused on it.
So what about the talk of Jared clashing with the inside? Is that any of that true?
There is a 24-hour news cycle that gets fed by and is encouraged by lots of salacious details. But at the end of the day, we're all focused on the work, and that's very true for Jared. So he's somebody who just likes to get things done. So he doesn't get involved in sort of all of that.
I know you're going to Wisconsin. You're going to be talking to the voters and to the people, to the core of this great country. We're going to come down to Washington later in the week and talk to you about that. We appreciate you sitting down with us.
I can't wait. I look forward to it.
All right, great to see you, Ivanka.
Great to see you. Great.
When we come back, Evander Holyfield, Stuart Varney. One of them's a really good boxer. I don't know which one.
And Kellyanne Conway.
Performance.